Good morning, everyone. Hope you are well. Just adjust this camera. Yeah, I hope you are well. And it's getting very autumnal, isn't it? I was out this morning early, taking my grandchildren to school, and it was really, really cold this morning. And we forget, don't we, when we've had some warm weather, as soon as we get a little bit of cold, it feels really, really cold. Well, this week, you can't have escaped the fact that there's been a problem with petrol and diesel. It's been on the news every day this week, or in all the newspapers, online. Politicians are discussing it. You've seen probably all the queues of cars outside the petrol stations. I haven't had to do that because I have an electric car, but that doesn't take away the possibility that if I had a petrol car or a diesel car, that I would probably be doing the same. Remember the last supply issue? It was toilet rolls, wasn't it? And people were buying toilet rolls as if there was no tomorrow. Of course, if there were no tomorrow, there wouldn't be any need for toilet rolls, would there really? It could be anything in our consumer-driven and news-heavy culture. And we're already having reassurances from the supermarket chains that there's not going to be any shortage of turkeys or other food at Christmas, which is almost an invite for everyone to suspect that there will be a shortage and stock up on frozen turkeys and so on, and thus creating a shortage which confirms their suspicions. The government has told us, hasn't it, several times, that there's not a shortage of fuel, but people hear the word shortage, and that's just what they hear, and that sets the ball rolling. And the thing that leads to these sorts of shortages is people thinking there is a shortage, so they'd better stock up, and then we have a shortage. And the conspiracies have also started. One I read was that because of COVID, when people weren't driving as much, there's a lot of old fuel in stock that needs to be sold off quickly as it becomes less effective. It goes off. So an artificial shortage was created by the government to sell it. These days, where there's an issue, there's always a conspiracy following it, never far behind. But the thing about panic buying is that nobody ever thinks they're doing it. It's normally couched in terms of, look at all those other idiots by forcing me to go out and stockpile things that I don't need. They're panic buying. I'm merely taking precautions because of their panic. Everybody else is panic buying, so I best get some stuff in quick before it all goes, and well, I may as well get that little bit extra just in case. It's only sensible. But no, I'm not panic buying. It's all the others. And I think that in many ways this gives us a sort of window into the human heart, especially in our relationship with God. Many of us simply don't listen to God when he tells us how we ought to live in the world. In the pursuit of happiness or whatever it is we're after, we can easily jettison the word of God, which tells us where true happiness is to be found. And much like the food shortages, the problem only arises when we decide, in our human wisdom, in our what sometimes we think of as our infinite wisdom, that the Lord's wrong, and we ought to take other precautions despite what he says. Then, of course, when these issues start to arise, we're very quick to diagnose the problem in others, whilst excusing it in ourselves. And in the story of Adam and Eve, it's precisely what Adam and Eve did when they sinned in the Garden of Eden. Adam didn't admit to disobedience. He insisted that he was just listening to his wife. Eve didn't admit to disobedience, and she insisted she was just listening to the serpent, whom God himself had created. Yes, okay, we ate the fruit, but they're the ones who really disobeyed, not me. And I suppose it's been the same way ever since. We say, oh, we're just pulled in and we're powerless to do otherwise. We have to join in for our survival. What else could we do? It's the fault of others, and we're just responding in the way we must under the circumstances. It's not really our fault. We're almost the victims of circumstance. We couldn't do any other. But just as food shortages will only be caused when lots of us refuse to heed the supermarkets and insist that if everyone else is buying up food, we better stockpile it before it all goes. So those issues of sinfulness run rampant when, despite what God tells us, we insist we have to follow suit because, well, everybody else is doing it and we'll be left behind if we don't join them. We ultimately cause our own problems and then seek to blame everybody else for them. And that's fundamentally the problem of the human heart. Everybody else is the issue. The problems are all out there, without much acknowledgement that I, too, am the problem and issues exist in here and in here. And I hope most of us do listen to what the realities are, what the supermarkets are saying, what the government's saying at this time about shortages. That we don't just join in, that we don't take responsibility, we just look at other people and say it's their fault. I hope that we do, that I do, resist the temptation to panic buy. But perhaps as we see others doing it around us, it will cause us to look deeper at why the world is as it is. Why do we excuse ourselves when we so quickly condemn the same thing in others? Perhaps as we ask that question, we might see the reality of our own human hearts, the frailty and the sinfulness of our own human hearts. As we come to terms with that, we can look at Jesus and we can say, you shall call his name Jesus, and he will save people from their sins. Well, that's something to think about. Something to think about as I'm saying those things, because I'm speaking to myself as well as you. I never can exclude myself from those issues. So let's think about them and reflect on how we should be responding. So I'll speak to you. It's really good to be back. Just as an aside, it's really good to be back, and I'll speak to you next Monday. And in the meantime, you take care of yourselves. God bless. Bye-bye.